stories from around the corner
and around the country.
You're listening to All the Best.
Proudly supported by the Art Gallery of New South Wales.
You're listening to All the Best from FBI Radio 94.5. This week's episode, we consider the tension between our personal truths and cultural expectations. And I start first by acknowledging that I'm recording from stolen and Gadigal land, and pay my respect to Gadigal elders past and present, and also recognize that the area where FBI Radio is situated, Redfern, has long been a place of storytelling, strength, resistance, and resilience for First Nations communities. Labels given to us by our communities can be hard to peel off. For a long time, I really did believe that I was lazy. And even now, with an ADHD diagnosis and a strong recommendation to be tested for autism, when I find myself struggling, I still feel like I could be doing more, that I'm just being lazy. This week's stories are about people whose personal discoveries conflict with their community's expectations. Our first story is about Khadija, a refugee from Sierra Leone, who doesn't truly understand her own neurodivergence until her son is diagnosed with autism.
He said the test was conclusive. You're autistic, and it comes out as level 3, and he goes, I am shocked. I said, I am not. I said, I'm not, because I know what it feels like to live in this body and this mind. It was never me. That's how I felt. It wasn't me. It was not anything I didn't do more of or less of. I wasn't lazy. I didn't. That wasn't it. I had a different brain, and it was existing in a world that did not understand it, and that had been why it was so hard.
That conversation with Khadija's therapist happened when she was 34 years old, living in Australia. But her story starts long before that, across an ocean.
I was born in Sierra Leone, west of Africa, but due to the civil war in Sierra Leone, my family fled. Smells, there's sounds, there's bombs, there's all these things happening, and there's not really time to be good. Okay, these are my needs and these are my needs. They're not needs, but just this constant awareness. You're not doing the things that everyone expects you to do, which will keep you safe. And the fact I couldn't do it to keep myself safe was the problem. And that, I think, is when I realized, okay, I'm in trouble here because I feel different from everyone around me right now. I am in trouble. And that sense continued throughout my life.
Khadija was resettled in Australia at 13, finally safe from a war outside. But inside, the chaos and pain came with her.
The moment my body calmed down from the wars of Sierra Leone, it felt everything in Australia.
Khadija says her mother couldn't hold space for her pain because she had too much of her own.
I wake up in the morning and I would say to her, I am tired. I feel like somebody beat the shit out of me. And she would say, I wish you would die. Because for her, she had come all the way to Australia and brought us here for a second chance at life. She had escaped the war and did her job, and I'm alive. This was a luxury to wake up and say, I am in pain because I have a roof, I have food. To her, in her context, that was a privilege. All my preferences, neurodivergency, what is now mostly known as my autistic traits. No. A refugee child, we don't have time for this shit. You get what you have. Who has time for your sensitivity? Sounds like you're trying to be a white girl. That's how she chalked my autism. That's how most of them, they would call me white girl. It was their code word for you're not black enough. There goes Khadija with her white interests that she has. She just can't have a black interest like the rest of us, like basketball maybe, or Nigerian movie. It has to be anime with another language, with cartoons. Strange child. So I was taught then to mask. The more I masked, the harder my body then captured all that pain. Chronic pain, chronic nausea, chronic fatigue, can't sleep. This will be diagnosed as fibromyalgia. The body, it remembers.
Today, Khadija and her mother are no longer in contact.
It's not even my mom's fault. I don't blame her. She's a person who's gone through war, was a single mom, was in a different cultural context, had no support network. She said, you're black, you're a girl, we can't add disability. For her, the label would have been the threat to me rather than the fact that not getting the care I deserve was actually what was posing the threat.
Well, Khadija's African-Australian community saw these autistic traits as somehow indulgent, a black girl simulating whiteness. Ironically, the broader Australian community mistook these traits for cultural difference.
That's what everything was labeled. She's just been black, she's just been Khadija, and I was being autistic. But I couldn't be that because the presentation of autism people knew wasn't black.
So Khadija spent most of her life feeling like an outsider, like the only one, until she had her son, Sammy. It was like they were tuned to the same frequency.
It's like looking at a twin version, but different. Like he looks at me like in wonder, wow, you're like me. I'm like, wow, you're like me. And it's a beautiful thing.
Then came the phone call. Sammy's school had been observing him, and they wanted to talk.
Kindy contacted me just before he was going to school and told me something's different about Sammy. Like, what do you mean? Something's different about Sammy compared to the other kids. Then they express all the adjustments and accommodations they extend at Kindy. And I shared this stuff. I also did at home. And I just thought he was just like me, but different, and my job was just to adapt. They're like, that sounds right, but maybe it's more than that.
It was. Sammy was diagnosed as being autistic.
When I found out he was autistic, I wasn't sad that he was. I was sad at the world I have to raise him in. There's so much negativity there. There's so much chaos, and there's so much ableism. But then I was reminded, I have always been making the world a better place. So why should I even be scared now? I just have to up the stakes.
Sammy's diagnosis made other things fall into place.
It would take me a year for me to go, if Sammy is like me, am I like Sammy? And I remember the first time I walked into my therapist's office and said, I think I need an assessment.
Her therapist looked at her and said, "You don't have autism. You have PTSD. You're a refugee. You've been through so much. And look at you. Now you've got 2 degrees. This isn't autism."
Oh, well, that is actually not only negatively stereotypical, but it's very biased. That is not how it works, but I also don't remember asking for your opinion. I asked for a test. It took a lot for us to get to the end, and I went, wow, if I, with somebody so assertive, could speak for themselves, felt that way, what chance does anyone else who is not English speaking? Imagine my auntie, 5 kids, African from Sudan. What the hell are they meant to do with that process? Let alone getting the referral to get to a psychologist for them to say that nonsense, and you have to knock it down and go, please administer the test. That's all I'm here for. And let the test determine what I am.
When the test finally confirmed what Khadija had known deep down all along, it was a mix of emotions. Relief She finally had a name for the way she felt her whole life. But alongside that, there was grief.
For everything I wasn't given, for every accommodation I didn't get so life could have been easy, for every rest, for every time I was called lazy, for every time I didn't just try hard. I was told I was antisocial, I hated people, I wasn't black enough because somehow I wanted things in a way that was white. It was for all the times I was made to feel like I was a waste of space.
It was time to let go of those old stories. Owning her identity as autistic gave Khadija power, self-acceptance, and that also extended to her physical body and the chronic pain it carries.
I am not ashamed to have a different body. I'm not ashamed that my body does different things. Is it painful? Is it exhausting? Yes, but I don't think there's a reason for me to have to feel ashamed because other people felt ashamed. I had to separate my mom's shame. It's not mine to carry.
When she looks at her son, Sammy, all this becomes even clearer.
How many years later will come full circle, generational change? I will be in the same junction with my child, and all I see is, what can I do to make sure you have better? But not just that, how can I heal so that I also give little Khadija what she never got?
While Khadijah's proud of her identity as autistic, when you're Black, in a minority, and in a new country, it comes with added complexity.
My autism has made me more vulnerable as a Black person. Stay calm, stay calm, stay calm. Don't have a meltdown, don't have a meltdown. Don't have a meltdown, it's okay, because you can have a meltdown. It's not safe for you to have a meltdown. You are not going to be viewed as a victim, you're an aggressor.
It's one thing for Khadija to have to worry that she is misinterpreted as defiant or dangerous. But what keeps her up at night is how the world might perceive her son.
Quirky autistic white boy, Sammy doesn't get the quirk. That is not what anyone is saying. Because he's Black, violence and aggression is projected to everything he does, even though he's just a 10-year boy.
So now Khadija speaks out on social media, in interviews, articles. She's even writing a book because her goal is clear: bring awareness and make space for voices like hers.
So people will say, I think they say I'm the face of Black autism, not that I wanted to be. But I think for my community, and this is not even including the indigenous community, that's a separate, and they have their story and their voice. But for the new and emerging community, refugee, migrant community, yeah, we don't have a face. We have not had, we have been an asterisk as people discuss autism. I wish I had somebody like me to realize that Black girls can also be disabled and they can be neurodivergent. And what does that look like? What example does that look like? I hope somehow now, as the world is changing, I'm like, yeah, this is what I would have wanted little Khadija to have now.
Little Khadija didn't have that someone, but her son, Sammy, does.
He knows he's disabled. His understanding of that is so different. To him, he knows he understands and experiences the world differently, and the world experiences him differently. But he knows how he feels about himself is the most important thing in the actual world. No shame, no stigma, can just be you, and I can just be me.
You're listening to All the Best on FBI Radio 94.5, and I'm Kwame Slusher. That story featured Khadija Gbla and was produced by Carey Scheer. For more stories like Khadija's, check out the Purple Orange podcast. Our second story is about sexual identity. Keros is a young Turkish Australian who wrestles with ideas of queerness, faith, and culture. And a content warning, There are instances of homophobia in this story.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اهدنا الصراط المستقيم الحمد لله رب العالمين صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد
I feel like I had no one in my corner, not even myself. And I was kind of just writing out my days knowing that when I'd be older, things would be better.
Khan's the kind of person who makes others laugh, not because things were easy, but because they weren't. His abrupt references and offbeat jokes fill the silence so you don't have to sit too long with heavy thoughts. Humor became his way of coping.
I'm definitely passing for an Australian that just looks a little bit hairier than the average Australian, to be honest. I would say my life hasn't been as hard as it could have been, but emotionally, the weight of everything growing up was very difficult.
Khan spent years hiding his true identity, and even now saying it out loud feels unfamiliar.
This is always confusing. It's hard to say in words as well, because you don't hear yourself say these things often, but I do identify as a gay man.
As the youngest of three, Khan learned to read the room before he ever learned to speak his truth. In a traditional Turkish household, that meant constant eyes on him and unspoken expectations.
So the way they would impose their beliefs on me is mostly through subtlety, but anytime there was any mention of something too feminine within me growing up, eyes were averted, or they all looked at each other like, I hope this isn't a thing, it's just a phase. I hope he grows out of it. Like, I didn't play with dolls, but I did play with plush toys, and that was too close to femininity that they thought it was too strange. Even growing up, if something happened around my uncle or my auntie, they would be the first person to say it straight up that what I'm doing is too gay.
Blending in became second nature. He learned how to stay just inside the lines, not out of comfort, but out of survival.
So by the time I got into religious school, I was probably maybe grade 7 to 8. So just beginning secondary school. And at this point, I felt I was really good at hiding my identity from anybody else. I kind of kept to myself. So I don't think any of the boys knew that I was gay, but they all assumed I was weird. Not anyone around me could understand what I was going through, what I was feeling.
While Khan learned to blend in at school, home was a different story. There, every gesture, every word, every silence was observed and scrutinized. He lived under constant pressure to be someone he wasn't, and when he fell short of those unspoken expectations, the backlash came sharp and unforgiving.
There's one instance where I've had my mum and sister pick me up from school, and I noticed the tension was rising in the car, and suddenly they start driving slower, and my sister's talking to me as my mum's driving, and she's saying being gay is a sin, and like I should abstain from that if I do feel those things, even though I've never had a conversation with anybody about that at that time. And my mum started chiming in, and it became an entire argument. It was getting quite vicious to the point where my emotions were at an all-time high, and I was so overwhelmed where I had to scream and cry through, like, choking back tears just to get my point across that none of this even matters. I think it stemmed from religious fear, because any gay is going to go to the hellfire, apparently. Definitely religious fear is one of the biggest contributors to their attitude towards the LGBT, and especially if someone within the family, the first person to be openly gay in the family, would be a hurt to their honor.
Growing up gay and Muslim felt like oil and water, two parts of himself that were never meant to mix, but he carried both. At school, at home, and in prayer. No matter how hard he tried to keep them apart, they kept colliding. Faith told him who he was supposed to be. His heart told him who he already was.
It was only till last year that I even had my first kiss. That's how long I'd been suppressing it. So when I was 22, I'd actually rejected several kisses before that out of religious guilt. But yeah, definitely within my sexuality, I do feel that it made me shove myself into such a small box where I feel like my sexual identity wasn't a part of my genuine identity. It was kind of like something that didn't exist.
Religious guilt had a way of shrinking him, convincing him that that part of himself didn't deserve space, let alone expression. So it's not surprising that the first place he felt safe enough to say it was online, hidden behind a username free from the weight of family, culture, or judgment.
I think the first time I've ever truly said that I was gay was probably in a Minecraft server, which is insane to me because I was like 13. And I could casually say anything I wanted at the time, and I knew there wouldn't be any repercussions because people didn't know me or my family. These were mostly Americans that were in the server as well, so they couldn't trace anything back to Australia. I felt a lot more confident in myself where I could say, yeah, I'm gay. And these people were like, cool, we don't really care. So, like, it felt so normalized in the sense that no one cared. So I kind of felt inclusive in there in a different way where it was comfortable to live and I didn't have to keep an eye behind me at all times.
Sometimes coming out isn't a single moment. It's a slow unfolding. It begins quietly, testing the waters and building up courage. But when it's your family and the fear of losing them hangs in the balance, it becomes a terrifying but necessary step.
So I came out to my mum and my sister at the same time, and they were the first two people that I told after my relationship with my partner started getting serious and we became official. And this is my middle-aged sister, and she was pretty accepting, given that a couple of years prior to that, she was still homophobic herself. But she accepted the fact pretty quickly. And my mum was kind of had a frozen look on her face where she was like, this can't be fucking real. Because I started getting so good at hiding myself to the point where she stopped suspecting it. So when the ball finally dropped and I said, hey, I'm in a relationship and it's with a guy, I don't care if you like it or not, I just felt like you two should be the first ones to know. I think even to this day, she hasn't taken it quite well, but she's starting to accept it slowly.
Coming out didn't fix everything, but it lifted something. A weight that he'd carried for years without realizing how heavy it had become. Even if the reactions weren't perfect, even if the acceptance was slow, the truth was finally out. He could just exist. And in that honesty, there was space to heal, to reflect, and to begin to rebuild faith on his own terms.
I don't find myself that religious these days, but I do find myself putting forward that one prayer that I learned in religious school, just as more like a safety net, because I do believe in a God. I think religion, when I was younger, I felt like it kind of strangled me at times where I couldn't make a decision based off of my own beliefs. I think things have changed for the better in my life. It was a lot of internal reflection that I've had to do over the last decade, and I think I've come out a much nicer person than I would have been had I been sucked into the whole religious spiral. And embracing all of that is making me change so much of my own personality as well, for the better. Like, I feel so much happier. I'm genuinely smiling these days.
You're listening to All the Best on FBI Radio 94.5, and I'm Kwame Slusher. That story was produced by Keras Marzalak. Special thanks to Janik Rogers. And if you're hungry for more storytelling, then keep listening to All the Best for unique stories from independent audiomakers from so-called Sydney and around the country. Definitely catch our live radio broadcast on Sundays at 9:30 a.m. on FBI Radio 94.5. We also release a brand new episode every Tuesday at 4 p.m. on allthebestradio.com, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So follow us now so you never miss an episode. All the Best would like to acknowledge the traditional owners on the lands in which we make these stories and pay our respects to elders past and present. All the Best is made at FBI Radio on Gadigal land, in association with SYN and 3RRR, on Wurundjeri Woi Wurrung and Boon Wurrung lands, and ACCC on Arrente and Wurrumungu lands. The All the Best executive producer is Mel Bakewell. Phoebe Adler-Ryan is our events and partnerships coordinator. Patrick McKenzie is our community coordinator, and a special shout out to some of our amazing volunteers, especially Sharon, Ray, Sue, Lindsay, Andrew, and Ash, who helped to make All the Best possible. Shining Bird composed our theme music, and Annie Hamilton designed the artwork. We're heard across Australia on the Community Radio Network. and were made possible by the Art Gallery of New South Wales and the Community Broadcasting Foundation. You can find our full archive of more than 600 episodes at allthebestradio.com. I'm Kwame Slusher. Thanks for listening.